Hello and welcome to another episode of Massalia Tales. On the last episode we saw another attack by the Sequani on the province of Octuduron, defended by its stout garrison army facing a small army with a huge advantage on the balance bar that was quickly overturned when we corralled them into a big blob and then used our many small regiments to surround and grind against them, eventually defeating them through morale loss. Eusebius over in Batavium wiped out the remnants of the Nori invasion force, paving the way for his counterattack. Gelon had to push into Sequani territory to avoid a blizzard in the Alps, so now is essentially beginning an invasion of their provinces. Eusebius did indeed go to attack Noria, but they sallied out to attack him because they only had enough food for one turn of siege works. Their attack was uphill against his hoplite line and was quickly repulsed. A counterattack wiped out their remaining forces, allowed us to capture the town, and then we quickly wiped out the remainder of the Nori forces, destroying that faction entirely. Now let's continue. Improving international relations and a calming military situation gave Massalia enough room to start investing their considerable gains into the foundations of a new Rome. Many writers from the time used those precise words. New roads and trading centres connected the lucrative docks in the city to their new domain, giving its occupants a safe line of supply for luxury goods, and giving their trade partners new, civilized markets in which to do business. It was a throwback to the original goal of Massalia's founders, but one that seemed almost accidental given the true motivation of their aggressive expansion. The destruction of the Nuri has exposed us to several new factions to the east who will now have to deal with. I was sending Ifyanasa to scout out the situation. There are no threats immediately nearby, but we are going to need to do some diplomacy. First, we've got the Boi, or perhaps the Boii, this giant tribal kingdom to the east, which controls a lot of territory. I think it's a few very large settlements that they have. They wouldn't go in for non-aggression or trade, so that's not getting off to a very good start with them, unfortunately. Perhaps they will become an enemy soon. There's also the Bruci, or the Bruci, just to the south of them, a smaller kingdom who are willing to trade with me. A much better sign. They are apparently devious in diplomacy, but still good to have the trade. Our relationship has already become quite good. It's unlikely they're going to attack. Even if they did right now, the demons of Polymus are sitting right in the position they would be attacking. So at the moment, we're pretty safe for stuff from the east. The Sequani, interestingly, might accept a peace deal, but I didn't want to go in for one because I think I have an opportunity to deal some more punishment to them for their recent infractions against my territory. Gelon, who's moving forwards, first moves to attack this small group of Sequani troops outside of their town. However, the large size of the garrison means the balance bar doesn't look good, and actually that garrison will be coming in behind his deployment zone most likely. I decided not to fight, but he actually retreated very far from the battle site, and now is in a really bad position, so I probably should have actually fought the battle. I did have a chance. Now he's already stuck. I could attack the town again and attempt a siege assault on it, but I ended up deciding I was just going to get out of there. I could also have just fortified my position. I wanted to get near my territory because if he is attacked and loses, I want him to be able to retreat back into our territory rather than farther into Sequani lands. Now you might remember in a previous episode I tried to get Crethius into the Timucoi. I tried to marry him in, but nothing has happened so far. Now a few turns later, I decided I would try the same thing with Eusebius. Eusebius is the guy I really want to get onto my side because of the huge amount of influence he'll bring, and that influence will give me lots of faction-wide bonuses at the moment I'm missing out on them. I'm also getting some faction-wide penalties as a result of increasing Imperium. The game gives penalties to me to make it harder to expand because I've already been expanding in order to control factions from getting too large, so that is a shame. Moving on, there is a slave uprising in Raeta Noricum. This is the province I've just captured, and the slave uprising, unfortunately this time, isn't right next to the Daemons of Polymus. It's over in Octuduron, the town that's already taken so many attacks so far. Very annoying. And also annoyingly, the Sequani decide to attack Gelon. The balance bar doesn't look good, and I decided immediately to retreat because I might need to use Gelon to fight that slave army, so I don't want to take any losses right now. You can see the slave army in the background there by Octuduron. Gelon retreats in a really inconvenient direction for that mission of mine, and then the Sequani bypass him completely and attack Octuduron. Thankfully, the slave army does not get involved in this battle. If it had done, the battle would already be over. But instead, we're just going to face a small Sequani army, not too different to armies we've managed to hold at Octuduron before. The balance bar doesn't look good, but as I say, the garrison at Octuduron has overcome these odds many times, so this is just a chance to do it again. And then we'll see how the slaves react, because their turn is next, and their actions could be very decisive for the fate of this province. The most sordid issue. I won't say I don't like the woman, but I did not think she was in with Melanthios. I'm glad Cretheus wrote to inform me of her motives, but then I am left with the question of how Cretheus has this insider information. Not everything can be deduced by wit alone. I wager he has seen offers of this nature himself. It begs the question, just who are the Timukhoi? When members do not know who the other members are, everyone you know could well be in on it. A deceptive and perhaps dishonourable movement indeed, and yet one that tears me apart with its otherwise rational and forward-thinking goals. The main body of the Sequani's attack force is coming from the north. This is their reinforcement army. It has a variety of medium, heavy and very heavy spears, plus lots of missile units, most of which are invisible at this point. They have some hidden units who will appear later on. Their very heavy spears are leading the way. Over in my part of the battlefield, you can see I'm just garrisoning the area where the enemy are going to approach from, sending over most of my heavy garrison hoplites to hold that part of the line, because that's where the main fight's going to be. I've got more held in reserve with my general. And on the south part of the town, I have some militia units who are going to be holding off against the enemy's initial attacking force. It's just a single regiment of these very heavy spears, already somewhat depleted. So the few regiments I've left behind, plus all of the archers, should easily be able to take care of this little attacking force. They get a bit closer, the archers bombard them as they come in, not doing any damage, as we gradually have to reduce their health before the archers will do anything. The enemy's unit, very conveniently for me, actually just attacks the guys on the end of the line, not spreading out to attack across the whole front I've presented. This means that once the guys are engaged, as they are, they're both going to be showered with arrows and potentially surrounded by these militia who are free to move around them. So we can really put some pressure on this unit, which already, as I said, doesn't have full strength, and we should be able to defeat it quite easily, especially because the archers, once the enemy are at low health, will be able to kill handfuls of them with every volley. Very quickly their numbers will dwindle and their morale will just go through the floor, especially once we rear attack them, which is going to happen any moment now. On the other side of the battlefield, my guys are ready to receive the enemy's advance. The enemy, really conveniently for me, are actually running into this battle. They ran all the way across the field towards the town, meaning they're going to be tired before they arrive. And even better, they've left some of their units behind. No idea why, but they appear to have left some slingers and a squad of heavy spears behind. They've also left most of their archers behind, we'll later discover. Very useful for me indeed. Now, the enemy's initial attacking force was defeated quite rapidly, as predicted. They were crushed from both sides by the militia. The archers actually did the majority of the killing. The militia just reduced their morale. A few survivors fight on, stuck in between the two lines of spears I'm presenting, but most of them will get out of there. I'm moving the archers back over to the north side of the town now to take part in the impending fight. Most of the archers actually had already moved, seeing they weren't all going to be necessary. My line is ready to receive the enemy. The archers already in position are firing as the first enemy unit comes to make its approach. Now, we've seen before that these guys have a tendency to want to just throw spears rather than engage, so I thought they would just stand about where they are now and throw spears at my line, and I was going to have to go and attack them. But it seems they are actually attempting to carry out a movement order, weren't actually trying to come and attack my men, so as a result, they're just walking up the hill here and then suddenly going to the attack just before they hit the line, meaning they don't throw their javelins or use their charging throw. So that's perfect for me. They're not going to use their main advantage. They're probably going to lose fighting against the front of my hoplite phalanx, so that's all good. I've got mob over here in the town distracting more of the enemy's heavy spears away from that part of the combat just to make things even easier. And coming in from outside the town, I've got these citizen cavalry. I'm rushing them forwards because an enemy unit of longbowmen has appeared out of nowhere. These guys have extreme range and very powerful bows, and they're bombarding my position on the little hill there, so I need to get rid of them using the cavalry. In the main fight, you can see I'm beginning to surround the enemy, although one regiment I moved forward to start surrounding was bombarded with javelins from incoming enemy units who stopped being distracted by the mob. There's two units coming in just off camera. This unit coming to support the first unit arrives just in time to see the first unit rout, so I'm going to have all of my own troops ready to go and engage the enemy in close melee. They're not going to use their javelins, perfect. These are the two regiments that were causing issues. There's some medium spears and some very heavy spears. They've already thrown a good number of javelins into my militia, damaging them their numbers, and I'm pulling them back very slowly to reform my line so I don't get outflanked. Unfortunately that doesn't work. You can see I do get somewhat outflanked, but only by medium spears. The medium spears will be defeated quite rapidly, even fighting on the flank, so that's excellent. More good news is the enemy's longbowmen have been driven off the field by my cavalry, although the enemy have now decided to deploy those units that they left behind. So the enemy will be getting some reinforcements very soon, although their forces already engaged probably aren't going to last very long, so they're going to have to move quickly. My mob are still somehow managing to draw off one unit of the enemy's spears who are walking towards them, drawing them into a trap to face the other units I have on the south part of the town already. The main fight has become a grind. My archers will be gradually killing some of them, although at this point of the battle they're almost out of ammunition, so they just have a couple of volleys hit into the enemy. Not expecting many results, but still it should help my men at least a little bit. Now my cavalry are rushing away from the enemy's advance because the enemy unveiled that they have loads of hidden archers that until this point in the battle I didn't know about. My cavalry get out the way, taking volleys as they go. It looks like there's 2 units of archers and 1 unit of slingers. The 2 units of archers are longbowmen. The Sequani love deploying these hidden archers that just appear and fire at your flanks. Very cheeky of them, but my cavalry should be able to escape and not be damaged by their fire. The unit my mob was kiting was successfully drawn into a trap, fighting the units that defeated the enemy's first unit coming in from the south, who are now just walking around the town or be able to completely surround that 1 unit, annihilate it, and continue on round to take part in this part of the fight. That is, if this part of the fight is still going, because these units are being overwhelmed by my own infantry. The balance bar has finally evened out. Most of the enemy's strength is now in these archers coming in invisibly from the north part of the battlefield, so it depends what they do with them really. They advanced up and looked like they were going to fire at my line, but actually that guy does a crazy trick shot, representing the fact that they wanted to fight my cavalry who I snuck in behind. What I was planning to do was actually not engage with the cavalry and just drive the enemy into skirmishing so they'd keep moving around. But unfortunately the 1 unit of enemy heavy spears bombards the cav with javelins and they take extreme losses immediately. It's not good for these cavalrymen. Their health is already low because they've sustained missile fire for a long time. So instead of actually attacking the enemy, I tried to move them away. You can see right at the end there I do give an attack order but then have to cancel it. Good news though is that the enemy's main infantry line is gone and my men are now pouring out of the town, although pouring for the hoplites is still very slow because they're a slow unit. So I'm going to move these guys forward to engage the enemy's archers. My cavalry, still holding their attention, have taken even more losses and need to just get out of there. You can see they're moving on waypoints, which causes them to stop. I come in and give them a manual order to tell them to move, because stopping where they are right now is very dangerous. So the enemy spears will now have to be engaged with my own spearmen, which is perfect. The enemy's archers stopped being distracted by my cav and looked like they were going to fire at me, but actually before they could do any real damage they started skirmishing, exactly what I wanted. So now my lighter forces can just chase the enemy's archers indefinitely whilst my heavier forces defeat the enemy's spears, and the loss of these spears mean the enemy's army losses are so high that I don't even have to catch the enemy's archers. They've already lost all of their companions, they don't fight on. In fact, I just about caught them just as the battle ends in a heroic victory for the Octuduron garrison. Not the first heroic victory for these guys, they've done it yet again, beating the odds. The game definitely thought this was a foregone conclusion in the Sequani's favour, but we have destroyed them and kept things safe. So yet another Sequani army is being wiped out by the Octuduron garrison on the campaign map. Let's see how many losses we took. It was less than 100, nothing really too bad. The cavalry unit taking the most shameful losses, in that it's a shame to lose them, not that they did anything shameful themselves. A heroic victory in which I'm going to enslave all the remaining Sequani troops, since we do need more slaves. The slave army itself doesn't attack me. It actually fell back as if it had also lost that battle. I think the game might have considered the slaves part of the combatants there and then forced them away. So they don't do anything. Octuduron is safe from a slave attack for now. Now we have this festival event. It's Thesmophoria, some sort of event basically aimed around celebrating the role of women. As a result of this, we're going to get 4 turns of bonuses to wealth and to public order. The public order one being particularly useful at this point because we do have lots of public order problems, particularly in the one that has a slave uprising, of course. Now the slave army itself appears to be suffering from attrition, which is great. It's already lost a good number of men, and it's just going to stand there and raid my territory. So the question is, should I attack it, or just let it stand there and raid and defeat itself through attrition? Gelon's army could attack the slave army. The only problem with doing that is it moves him away from his real target of the Sequani, and he might take losses doing so, meaning he might have to wait around before he can attack the Sequani in the future. So I have to make a decision about what I do there. I wanted to see if the Sequani would accept any sort of interesting peace deal, because then I could just focus on the slaves and not have to worry about taking losses and not have to worry about needing to go and attack the Sequani. However, because they weren't particularly pliant and I was going to refuse a white peace because I felt we're definitely winning this war, there's no point going in for a peace with no terms, I decided not to go for that option. We are going to still have our war with the Sequani, and I'm going to leave the slaves alone. Gelon is going to attack the Sequani right now, attacking the nearest group and driving them away from our border. I don't have enough movement points to move into their territory, so I decided I'd move back towards ours, so if I'm attacked, again I'm more likely to retreat into my own territory than the enemies. So Octuduron is still under risk of being attacked by the slaves if they do stop raiding. Luckily I have the council task force led by Crethius, which was of course raised for just such an occasion, and a similar occasion with the Raeti in Mediolanum, so he is going to move to occupy Octuduron and continue that role as a defender of our endangered provinces, and hopefully if the slaves do attack, he'll have a good chance of holding them. After everything, they have the audacity to turn down a rather undeserved peace and the generous offer of clienthood. I know barbarians don't have much in the way of cogent thoughts, but I would think the people would see that their leaders have failed them so many times that they should be begging to be our satrapi. No doubt they would tell me that a bad German is better than the best of the Greeks, and no doubt that view would change when the tip of a fine Greek spear pressed against their neck. Petty and foolish, that is all they are, like overly hairy children. Probably for the best that we keep killing them after all. While I was administering my territories, I noticed a big Diorsi army happens to be standing on the border of Patavium. A strange sight, because as far as I know, the Diorsi have good relations with me. They're another Hellenic faction. It does say they're unreliable and expansionist, so it's plausible they are planning some form of betrayal. And of course, their main force probably isn't just standing there on some sort of sightseeing tour. So in reaction, I'm going to pull the daemons back down from Noria and put them to guard Patavium, just in case the Diorsi decide to pull something during the end turn sequence. I'm going to position Eusebius so that his zone of control covers both of the two bridges that the Diorsi would have to cross to go to either Patavium or Mediolanum. So we're pretty safe from attack now. The enemy will have to attack the daemons, and their force didn't look particularly powerful, so I'm expecting that this will at least dissuade the enemy from attacking. Moving forwards, the Celto-Iberian Confederation sends a small and damaged fleet to attack the Sequani raiding force just outside of Massalia. Previously I didn't want to attack this force because I thought I'd lose too many of my own ships and they're expensive to replace, but now that the Celto-Iberians are providing some form of a distraction, perhaps foolishly, this is a perfect chance for me to go out into battle and try and defeat the Sequani raiders once and for all, which will of course change the balance of my war with the Sequani to make it even more in my favour. So here is the Sequani fleet just floating on these surprisingly murky looking waters. I think I have the graphics settings set up to not be rendering the water very well. But anyway, my army is coming in right behind the enemies. Its ships deploy immediately behind their deployment zone. So it's actually not going to be the Celto-Iberians distracting the enemy, it's probably going to be me distracting them whilst they attack. My fleet is led by Homer with his very nice looking and huge ship manned with many archers, basically a support ship that can sit back and fire at the enemy. The rest of my ships are assault ships. They have to rush into close range to do damage. The enemy has lots of their own assault ships. They have one ramming ship and the rest are boarding type ships, currently speeding towards the enemy's position, but the enemy is mostly focusing on me. The first engagements begin. Most of the enemy's ships are boarding ships as well, so what their objective is to just move over to my ships and throw their crew on board mine and attempt to fight this as a melee fight. My ships are mostly ramming ships, however after the first ram the enemy just board you unless they're already boarding, as you can see here, so I'm able to ram this small assault ship with a supporting ship. I should be able to do this across the board because I have more ships overall. The enemy's general is deploying his heavy swordsmen onto this ship here. Those heavy swordsmen are better than my crew, so the boarding action won't go in my favour over time. There's a little bit of congestion actually, because a lot of ships get stuck as all the ships just collide and cause other ships to get stuck without boarding. Some of them get stuck and have to struggle out of position, but where boarding is happening, it's generally not going in my favour because the enemy's boarding crews are better than mine. I do have Homer's archers who'll be able to support me by just taking out enemy crew members from afar. The archers actually do a lot of damage against these lightly armed enemy crew members. Over here, 2 of my transport ships carrying some Gallic spears have attacked an enemy ship and it spontaneously catches fire as my guys are boarding it. So that's convenient. My guys leaped with incredible strength back onto their own ships, leaving the enemy to burn on their boat. That went quite well. A couple of other ships appear to be spontaneously combusting as well. I think there's something about boarding actions that enables a fire to be started. I can't quite work out how it happens. My lighter ships, the small fast ones, are sneaking through the enemy lines to get ready to ram them from behind. I didn't actually manage to sink any ships during this battle using ramming. Ramming has been toned down a lot since the last time I played a naval battle, which was right when Rome 2 came out. The Celtiberian Confederation ships are in position to support my guys fighting on my ships, but unfortunately they're just throwing javelins onto my ship where both sides are fighting and killing my own troops as well. And my troops on that ship in particular are being defeated because they're outnumbered and surrounded. But I have so many more troops than the enemy overall that this shouldn't be a problem. I've got lots of ships still free, ready to engage with the enemy. The enemy's general is still fighting with this ship here, the one that engaged them from the beginning, though in the meantime they jumped off to go and fight that ship on fire in the background. So they've destroyed one of my other boats and came back to finish the job with this first boat they were fighting. But my freed up ships are going to come in to support, so the loss of the ship they're fighting now won't be too bad. This boat, you can see, is sailing rapidly with troops of both sides stuck on board. I think the enemy routed but didn't go back to their own ship, so my crew members start having to fend with those as they sail around the place. Here you can see I've teamed up several small boats to attempt to ram an enemy ship into submission. But as I said, the ramming isn't as powerful as it used to be. Many rams it takes to down a ship. So even though I'm pounding the ship, it's still at 96% hull damage, so it hasn't quite been destroyed. And actually I got myself blocked, so I couldn't do it anyway. Over here, a long-range ramming tactic against this enemy ship proved not particularly useful because the Celtiberian Confederation had pretty much cleared them up anyway, so things were already going our way. More spontaneous combustion happening in the center of the field. Unfortunately, some of it has happened on my ship. You can see one of my ships here. This was the one that was being attacked from 2 sides by enemy boats, so the crew already in trouble. Now the boat's on fire. The surviving enemy crew are escaping whilst under arrow fire from Homer, who on his big high ship is firing down at them, managing to get a lot of kills. He probably killed hundreds of crew members during this fight. The enemy general has pretty much finished off his prey on my side, but is now being rammed by the ships that are being freed up elsewhere. His ship catches fire just out of nowhere, went from 0% fire damage to 100% just randomly, and as a result, there is a chain rout across all of the surviving enemy ships, although there weren't that many surviving at this point anyway. A decisive victory for the combined fleet of Massalia and the Celtiberian Confederation. This means Massalia's economy will be improved because we're no longer being raided by those pirates, plus it's a blow in our war against the Sequani that will give me some nice leverage to use next time. Melanthius still did not trust Gelon. The boisterous commander's achievements were overshadowed by a lack of noble birth and a well-known selfishness that seemed to control all of his decisions. The decision to abandon Octuduron to campaign against the Rieti was a leading example of such poor judgment. Only the extensive actions of the Timucoi agents were able to raise enough forces in the province itself to hold the line in a series of unlikely victories. Few would know the Timucoi's hand in the matter, and Gelon would not know that his apparent luck was coming at the cost of a future in the brotherhood that would soon control the whole republic.